Hi everybody, you've reached Lasha at High Voltage, and we are finishing off Ask Not, the Kennedys and the women they destroyed. And I just want to get right into it. As I've said before, again, my name is Lasha Royenko. The channel is called High Voltage. And I was going to paint it right there, but the Christopher Pratt picture is there. So maybe I should just paint High Voltage on the ceiling, you know? And my window is open and it's a fall day. I can't believe how fast summer went by. Anyways, I know there are lots of other channels that are far ahead of myself, and my readings are a lot shorter and not quite as consistent. However, the video that I did yesterday was in reference to trauma and healing, and I put up a short of, in short, this is what that video is about, but I seem to have difficulty getting to the point. So let's go ahead and finish off with Kik Kennedy. Before Billy, Kik had a singular kinship with her mother, Rose. No other Kennedy child before rose from Joe's constant womanizing. Now, that loyalty seemed to mean nothing. Kik knew her mother might not approve of Billy's religion, but she never anticipated her mother's cruelty. She never anticipated her mother disowning her. After all, Rose's own parents hadn't approved of Joe Kennedy, but she'd married him anyway. Was this some particular grievance that Rose had against Kik? Was Kik too much like the boys, Jack especially? How could Rose believe in God? What would judge another based on more determination? And Billy's father was as aghast at the romance as Rose Kennedy. The Devonshires, that was that's a royal name that goes back centuries, and in our last readings we discovered that she was in that aristocratic social society, and this needs to be addressed. They would have had Hitler sentiments. It says that here if you read between the lines. And according to Andrew Lowney's book, The Traitor King, in reference to David who abdicated the throne and Wallace Simpson, you know, the world blamed Wallace Simpson for, she never wanted to marry him. So this is interesting because it just makes me think of elites, and that'll be another topic. However, so how could their parents care about such things now, with their young lives at stake, the world as they knew it careering toward the abyss? For there was no question when war came, Billy would serve in combat. There was also no question that Ambassador Kennedy would order his children back to the States, adults or not, once war broke out. Okay? Just one moment, please. Just one moment, please. Just a moment. Okay. In the fall of 1939, okay, so this chapter started at the beginning of 1938, so this is a year later. In the fall of 1938, 18 months after docking in England, Kik was back in America. Okay, so this is how those Boston accents when I was looking at linguistics, come about. Even if you think of the actresses and actors back in the 1930s, Diana, the Princess of Wales, would have made a great silent actress, but that's another topic. So, okay, a year's gone by. So, in fall 1939, 18 months after docking in England, Kik was back in America. Her first salvo was a thank you letter to her father for giving me one of the greatest experiences anyone could have had. She did not reference the terror she'd experienced in anticipation of the Blitz, London going dark in September 1939, a zombie city at night, aerial bombings imminent. I talked about this in the other video about imminent danger and the Menendez brothers. You've got to watch Monster on Netflix. There was still nowhere she'd rather be. Her London still a place where she wrote, "The moon shines through." The moon was Billy. Kik bided her time in New York, returning to her former life as just a Kennedy girl, no longer the brash American whose worldwide had been broadened and deepened by her British friends, all of whom won her over by her joie de vivre. Je ne sais quoi, c'est quoi, c'est quoi, c'est quoi. Kik's great conflict with her father had nothing to do with Billy nothing to do with Billy at all, but with Hitler and America's role in the war. Joe, as U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom, has sought to meet with Hitler and had engaged had encountered appeasement with Nazis. He thought democracy in Western Europe and America would soon be dead, and that the German would embellish a new world order, one that in fact agreed with Joe's blamed the Jew media in the United States, as he wrote to Viscountess Nancy Astor. This is when I said I can't even. The last video I was at, because I just thought the grossness of elites. At any rate, here we go. Nancy Astor condemning their coverage of Hitler and his aristocrats for setting a march to the fuse of the world, like a fused back. It doesn't work. Yeah, a fused world would be like having a fused back that doesn't work. The Kennedys and the royal family, they go way back. I don't have diabetes, but my blood sugar was getting low, and that's why I did that. And I tripped on my mother's walker because I want to do a little dance to Putting on the Ritz after. So anyways, Kik's oldest brother, Joe Jr., admired as well, writing that Hitler was smart to seize upon a common enemy, somebody of whom to make the scapegoat. Too bad it had to be done to the Jews. The dislike of Jews, however, he continued, was well-founded. They were at the heads of the big business on law, etc. It is all to their credit for them to get this far. but their methods had become quite unscrupulous. This is nauseating. It's truly nauseating. I have this that I'm also going to read about the royals after this chapter. So, sorry. So that's how they got so far, but their methods had become quite unscrupulous. The lawyers and prominent judges were Jews, and if you had a case against a Jew, you were nearly always sure to lose it. As far as the brutality is concerned, it must have been necessary to use some. Kick's father was grooming Joe Jr. to run for president of the United States, but he would barely stand up for her and for Billy against Rose. Should she have been surprised? Catholicism wasn't their one true religion, power was. You see, I always say, people who want power, if they're given power, they take advantage of it, and their royal connection, I mean, it's unbelievable. We really are all just waves. Catholicism wasn't their true religion, power was. Kick returned to America believing, unlike her father and brother, that Hitler must be defeated. She was proud of Billy. I'm not saying anything. She was proud of Billy for enlisting and frantic to see him. At the moment, it looks as if the Germans will be held in England before you receive this letter, she wrote to old Joe in May 1940. She reiterated her belief in Britain's moral and military supremacy. In fact, from reports, has anybody read about Winston Churchill? Well, that's another topic. In fact, from reports here, they are just about taking over. I still keep telling everyone the British lose the battles, but they win the wars. I have received some rather gloomy letters. Billy's letter was written from the line, Daddy, I must know exactly what has happened to them. Is Billy all right? Francis Maginnon Line, a miles-long triumph of fortification, had been overrun by the Germans. Jack, equally convinced that democracy would not survive World War II, wrote to their father on Kick's behalf. Kick is very keen to go over, he said, and I wouldn't think that the anti-American feeling might hurt her like it might do to us, due to her being a girl, especially as it would show that we hadn't merely left England when it got unpleasant. Kick was no girl. She was a woman, braver than her brothers, but she took what she could get. What do you think of what you're reading and of this, and how are you interpreting it? I don't want to instill my thoughts. That's why we're going live tonight. So I'm going to continue to read. However, I highly recommend, if you're interested in this book, if you want to read go to the playlist under Ask Not the Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed, and you can start it with the latest uploads or the newest uploads, but you have to start from the bottom up, and it'll take a couple of hours. Or If you've already read this book and you're just passing through, join tonight at 7, because I'll be asking questions about what we've read thus far. And yeah, at any rate, The Imitation Game is another movie that's really interesting about what role the British played in World War II, and how in the 1930s, the USA, European countries, I don't know if they really knew what was going on, but they turned away Jewish people from the States in the 30s, before the war, when they knew the war was coming, because there was American intelligence back then, so they must have known what was going on, these countries. What kind of strategy was that? Because then they were all sent back to Europe and expired. Kit couldn't just wait around like some incipient war widow. She dabbled in schools in New York and in Florida, and in 1941 got a job at the Washington Times-Herald as a research assistant. She found herself drawn to John White, a 30-year-old reporter and debater. He was also a minister's son with a snake tattoo on his arm. That would have been scandalous back then. Hi, Sophie. The guy was Kix Speed, another rebel, White liked Kik a lot, but her dogmatic opinions surprised him. Birth control is murder, she'd say. Premarital sex, that was out too. How could such a firebrand be so dogmatic? Everyone knew what the Kennedy boys got up to. Birth control was the least of it. White was even more surprised at how defiant Kit could be toward old Joe. That she wasn't outraged when he ran background checks on her friends and suitors, something White knew about firsthand because old Joe had hired someone to investigate him. Kik's brother Jack was allowed to date whomever he wanted, including their friend and colleague Igna Avred. Ruma had it Igna Bigna Jack might be spy for Germany. See, I just said that. But old Joe didn't care about that. No, he cared that Kik remained a virgin before marriage. And oh, how that frustrated John White after they went out for dinner for a movie. Kik would sometimes allow John back to her place. She'd let him sit on her bed, rub her back, but nothing else. When White would press for more, Kik would only say, "That's the way it is." White tried to kiss her once. Kik shied away. "I don't want any of this, John," she said. "You must understand. Please don't try. I don't want that thing. The priest says not to do." Whether because of her childlike effect or despite it, John fell in love with Kik. They shared newsroom banter right out of the front page. He called her an ignorant, thick-headed Mick, and she called him a shrinking, bald-headed, irritable old man. White often said that Kik was the most fun to argue with because she was always wrong. Kik kept circling back to birth control argument, and that led to her thoughts of her friends back in England who told Kik in cabs and letters that sex was now the most defiant, life-affirming thing one could do. Yeah, and it's true. You know, people should take some of that advice. And I agree with Candace Owens that Vanafagati is weaponized. Anyhow, Jack was now as pessimistic as his father tried to talk Kik out of it. This is a marriage. I would strongly advise against any voyages to England to marry an Englishman, Jack wrote Kik, for I have come to the reluctant conclusion that it has come time to write the obituary of the British Empire. Oh, well then. Huh. Okay. So, we'll be on page 94, and then we're getting into Mary Jo. Wow. We'll be back with more Astronaut. I need to rebuild my sugar content with my water bottle for my bike, but I can't find the cap. And you know, Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, the reason she kept her sister out of the will is because her sisters had an affair with Jack Kennedy, and so did all of Jackie Kennedy's friends. And she'd have to sit there with all of them. Thoughts? I'm reading it. I don't want to say too much till tonight because then I'll have a lot to say, because if I start talking, I will go off on a tangent. Okay? I have to go put on the Ritz. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining.